Deor na hasa chardia. Now, I've been asked by a friend of mine to do a video on the Irish course as is taught on Duolingo, because he said that the pronunciation is absolutely crap, that they've obviously trained the AI, if it is AI, on very weak learners who haven't learned to pronounce the words themselves properly. So I said I'd have a look. Off we go. Which one of these is coffee?
Cafe.
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 So
Cafe.
there are 3 mistakes there in the one word. So first of all, every consonant in Irish can have a broad or slender pronunciation. The broad is lower pitched than the English, and the slender is higher pitched than the English. So you know the broad ones because it'll be followed by the vowels in English, or surrounded by the vowels a, o, u, or the sounds a, o, u, or a, o, u. So you'd expect the C to be broad. So the broad C is k, 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 as opposed to the slender C, k, k, k. But because she's using her English pronunciation and has the vowel a in English, a is a front vowel, so that means that she's going to use a fronted C, which is like the slender C. K, 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 k. So cafe, she says, rather than cafe, cafe. If the word is said, I mean, coffee is probably what you're most likely to hear in the Gaeltacht. But anyway.
Cafe.
Another thing, though this, if she can't even get this right, she's hardly going to be bothered by this, that F in English and V are what are called labiodental consonants, so that the lower lip is raised to the teeth. But less anglicised Irish speakers have bilabial consonants. There are no labiodental consonants in Irish. So bilabial means that you use both the lips only, no teeth. And it's a slender F, which means that the lips are pulled back. If it were a broad F, the lips would be pushed forward from the teeth.
Cafe.
It sounds as if she's pronouncing that as an E. That should be a cafe. A very common mistake amongst learners is that they pronounce E and A also, for example, at the end of a word as a in English, so like katha or shukra. But you'd be better off thinking of the E as an IH English, so kathe, I, and this as a UH in English, o, and not a. But anyway,
Cafe.
So 1 short word and 3 mistakes or 4 mistakes. Well done. Select the correct meaning. Oh, same thing again.
Cafe.
Right. Moving swiftly on.
Casa.
So
Casa.
this is a different mispronunciation. Just maybe their whole point is that just so you get used to all the different mispronunciations.
Casa. Casa.
So the same mistake. He has something similar to a slender C, k, 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 as opposed to the broad.
Casa.
Because it's a broad C, and also the mistake I just mentioned, actually pronouncing E at the end of a word as English a rather than I in Irish. So instead of saying cafe, 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 he says cafa, cafa, cafa,
Casa. Casa. Casa.
rather than cafe, cafe, cafe.
Casa.
Anyway, not off to a good start.
Cafe.
Same mistake again, just in cafe, in completely non-native, sort of Americanized, enthusiastic mispronunciation. Cafe. Which one of these is te? Now, this is an interesting word because in the standard spelling of Irish, it's actually misspelt, because none of the dialects, to my knowledge, pronounce this word with a broad T, which is against the teeth sockets, what's called dentoalveolar, but is actually pronounced as a slender T in Munster, with the middle of the tongue. So that So I suspect that this is going to be mispronounced as something like tay, when it should be te.
Te.
Yeah. So she pronounces it with the broad T, and then a very common mistake amongst my friends in Dublin learning Irish, A in Irish, the long E fada sound is a monophthong, meaning that it's just one long pure vowel, A. But it's very common amongst Dublin people and other English language cultures, England, America, most other dialects of English, to make it a diphthong and say not A, but A, so that they're actually two different vowels. That's not the case in Irish, although Donegal Irish is slightly complicated. We won't get into it. Anyway, so here she's saying tay, instead of tay. Won't you go to sleep, Eliana, till I wet your daddy's tay?
Te.
So again, this is a different mispronunciation.
Te.
It sounds like he's Indian.
Te.
So what it sounds like to me is that he
Te.
has a retroflexive T, meaning that the tip of the tongue is pointing way back into the mouth. Te. So the typical Indian accent has a retroflexive consonant. That's what his T sounds like.
Te.
He also isn't aspirating,
Te.
or maybe he is. Just to mention it anyway, that this won't bother English speakers too much, but if your first language isn't, or if you don't have a language that uses aspiration like English and Irish, when you have PTK at the start of a word or at the start of a stressed syllable in English and Irish, there's a little puff of air afterwards. So for example, if you light a match and say spar, star, scar, the flame won't go out. But as soon as you say par, there'll be a puff of air after the P, and that will quench the flame.
Te.
And now
Te.
perhaps this fellow is trying to combat the tendency that learners in Dublin have to mispronounce A. So he's trying to get the A vowel, and in order presumably not to put in the A, this E in the second, well, in the sound, he's actually shortening it, so he ends up cutting the word far too short, and he's like de. It sounds more like the way a Spanish person would say de. De gustate. Anyway, which one of these is sugar? Sugar is right. So I presume this is going to be mispronounced as shukra.
Shukra.
Yeah. So the most obvious mistake is probably the vowel at the end. Again, this should be in Irish when you get A at the end of an unstressed syllable. So basically, if it's not the first syllable, it'll be pronounced as O, what an English speaker might think of as a UH. O. So shukra. Then she mispronounces the R as what's called an approximant R, so that the tongue comes close to the alveolar ridge or whatever part you're pronouncing. And this typical English R, whereas in Irish it's typically a tap. So shukra, just one short R, and it's gone. Then the vowel
Shukra.
This is something that's spreading amongst the uppies in Ireland. This pronunciation of oo, the steep oo, gets pronounced as a, and then finally she mispronounces the S then as well. So she pronounces it like in English SH, sh, which is usually accompanied by lip rounding and the lips being pushed out a bit. Sh, so shukra. Whereas the Irish slender S is actually, the lips are retracted. Sh, so shukra. Now in Munster Irish that's actually pronounced as if it were S-I-U for the I-C-R-E, and we say shukra. But anyways, she says shukra, rather than if I were to pronounce this spelling, shukra, and not shukra.
Deaga shukra.
This is so more or less the same
Shukra.
mistakes. The same thing, shukra. It sounds as if he was pronouncing it
Shukra.
S-H-O-O-K-R-A. There'd be no difference between his English pronunciation of that word in English and his mispronunciation of this Irish word.
Ishuka.
And now, I presume the way he's going to mispronounce this, Agus, is by saying Agus.
Agus.
Agus. Agus. Yeah. So again, every letter, if you want to think of it like that, in Irish has a broad and a slender pronunciation. So this G, in this case, is broad because it's followed by a back vowel, A, O, U. But he pronounces it as a slender G almost. He doesn't quite get that far. He says Agus, G, 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 which is kind of a neutral English G, whereas the broad G in Irish is deeper, further back, the tongue is further back, go, go, go. So Agus, Agus, and not Agus. And the same
De.
De, the same mispronunciation of T that there was before. Anyway, tea and sugar. So again, they'll probably mispronounce this as Agus.
Agus.
Agus, again, a different mispronunciation, so you get used to it.
Agus.
Agus, Agus. It should be Agus with the broad G. Go, 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 go. Not G, 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 G. So Agus.
Agus. Té agus siúcra le the hull.
Oh, Jenny.
Té.
Té. So we've discussed that mispronunciation.
Agus.
We've discussed that mispronunciation.
Siúcra.
Siúcra.
Le. The.
Leather, they're not too bad. La. Well, the vowel here, usually in Munster Irish, that's often lay, as if there were a sheena fad over it, and an accent, this little accent going upwards from left to right. But you often find that she's using her kind of D4 mispronunciation. So in English, you often find that some people in Dublin say the E vowel, as in dress, as a lowered so it almost sounds like an A, so like drass, my head, I've a pain in my head. And that vowel is approaching it here, so she's saying la.
Le.
La. Okay, well, she doesn't have quite the A pronunciation, she has the lowered A, la. But anyway,
The.
not too badly mispronounced, except that the D should be velarized, so slightly deeper. The.
Hull.
Hull. You find this kind of amongst Americanoid mispronunciations in Dublin, especially. That when people from Ireland are trying to sound American for whatever reason, that if I say the English word hull, 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 right? My L isn't particularly deep, but it's one of the traits of English accents in England and America and other places to lower that L to make it a lower pitch, hull. And that's what she is mispronouncing the L, the slender L, L. Here, she's using her Americanoid pronunciation, all. Let the hull. I'll try and get the
Hull.
Hull, oh. Wrong L sound. It should be L. Let the hull. They might sound, for those of you who haven't studied Irish pronunciation before, they might sound like small differences, but in Irish they're phonemic, meaning that they can change the meaning of a word. But anyway, tea and sugar, please.
Le the hull.
Le the hull. So the intonation is completely wrong, but anyway, le the hull. And he also mispronounces what should be a H sound, a voiceless H here. He pronounces it something similar to the CH. So he says le the hull as if it were a CH.
Le the hull.
Le the hull. And again, he doesn't get the slender L at the end. Le the hull. Le the hull. In Munster, in any case, we preserved the old Irish form as close as it was, where that's led, and then lethol, the D gets devoiced to a T because of the following H sound. So lethol.
Le the hull.
Le the hull, mispronounced. Anyway.
Ishukra.
Shukra. So again, that should be shukra, if you have a dialect or learning a dialect that has this pronunciation, whereas in Munster, as I said, it's pronounced as if it were SIU for the ICRE. Shukje.
Agus.
Agus, which should be agus, and not agus.
cafe,
Same mistakes.
te,
Tay.
Atha agus siúcra le do hull.
Alright, it's the same mispronunciations over and over again. So, cafe agus siúcte.
Is siúcra.
Le thoil, not siúcra.
Is siúcra.
Very common mistake, watch out for that. Coffee and sugar, please. Okay,
Atha the
what am I doing here? I'm doing the Irish, sorry.
is siúcra.
Oh, it's meant to be Irish.
The hull.
Does he mispronounce it there again in a different way?
Hull.
Hull. Yeah, so for some reason the male speaker seems to have particularly short, overly short pronunciations. Maybe so you won't hear the mispronunciations. Aha, we're on to him.
Hull.
Hull. Hull. Hull. Or some dialects say hull because the O before the slender L becomes an E. Let the hell. Let the hell. But anyway, what he's saying is wrong. Almost there.
te,
Tay rather than te.
agus,
Agus rather than agus.
cafe,
Cafe rather than cafe.
le,
Le,
do,
vo,
hull,
hall, le toil. Right, that was excruciating. Oh, there's one more, is there? No, it is over. Thank goodness. Perfect. I presume they're talking about me and not their product, not the actual lesson they offer. So that's that. I can't say that. Well, so what I would recommend is certainly in the state that Duolingo currently has their Irish course. Definitely do not use Duolingo to learn pronunciation because you will only learn mispronunciations from bad learners themselves. It's probably useful for vocabulary. But anyway, maybe Duolingo will get around to reinstating the proper native speaker that they had before. Anyway, shouldn't wait.